We've had several FNaF releases and over 12 main games, but one of the most notorious entries when it comes to atmospheric horror is Five Nights at Freddy's 4. It was an oddball in the franchise, a game that completely flipped the script, not just in how you played, but in how you experienced fear, turning the atmosphere into something far more intense than anything that came before it. And today I'll be breaking down exactly how those sound and visual designs work, why it was so different, and why it made FNaF 4 one of the most terrifying games in the entire series. So hey everybody, I'm Jeeps. Make sure you stick around until the end because this goes a lot deeper than it actually seems, and if you enjoy my deep dives into FNaF games, consider subscribing. And with that said, let's begin. In order to understand why the atmosphere in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 works so well, you first have to understand what the game takes away from you. Because unlike every other FNaF game before it, FNaF 4 doesn't give you cameras, it doesn't give you a map, and it doesn't give you any visual confirmation that you're safe. From the moment the night starts, you're basically blind, and the only thing standing between you and death is what you think you hear or heard throughout the night. This single design choice forces the player to listen instead of look, turning sound from a background detail into the most important gameplay mechanic in the entire game. Now honestly, I've never been someone who overanalyzes the mechanics of FNaF 4, but while working on this video, it became clear just how dense and intentional the sound design really is. Packed with details you don't notice on the first night, the second, or sometimes at all. From the very start, you're dropped into a space that feels familiar, a child's bedroom. And that familiarity is important because the sounds that fill it aren't immediately threatening. Throughout the night, there's a deep, low background hum that never fully goes away, almost like a distant vibration under everything else. And mixed into that are crickets outside, the faint sound of cars passing by, even dogs barking in the distance. None of these sounds mean danger necessarily, but they create the feeling that the world is still alive beyond the walls of the house, while you're stuck alone inside of it. And that's really what makes it work so well. These are the kind of noises a child would fixate on late at night, something I would do when I was 7 years old, when the house was dark and your imagination starts to fill the gaps. The creak of a door suddenly sounds louder than it should, and the silence feels heavier. The sound of something brushing against the carpet makes you stop and listen, or the chiming of a grandfather clock every hour that you get closer to 6 AM. Even random noises from the kitchen feel close enough to matter. Most of the time, these sounds don't lead to anything at all, but that's the point. They train you to doubt what you're hearing in order to second guess yourself, and to create an eerie sense of uncomfortability combined with familiarity, because a large part of FNaF 4's atmospheric design is reliant on the use of sounds. And in a game where hesitating can get you killed, that uncertainty becomes extremely terrifying. Then separately, there are the sounds that do matter. Small to large things like subtle breathing coming from the animatronics when you lean into the darkness, which, believe me, is absolutely terrifying on a first playthrough. If you've only watched it and you haven't checked it, go try it yourself. I guarantee you it's terrifying. But as I was saying, these are the moments where the game demands your full attention, because these sounds aren't just atmospheric, they're mechanical. They mean something. Missing them even once means you weren't listening to the wrong thing at the wrong time, and that's the real trick. FNaF 4 doesn't overwhelm you with noise, it overwhelms you with responsibility. Every sound feels important, but only a few actually are, and the game never tells you which ones matter until it's too late and you eventually have to learn yourself. When you put it all together, the atmosphere isn't created through jump scares or loud stingers, it's built through ordinary sounds placed in the wrong context at the worst possible time, forcing you to listen like a scared kid alone in the dark, never fully sure if what you're hearing is harmless or the last mistake you're about to make. But here's the thing, FNaF 4 can be really quiet at times, so a lot of players end up cranking up their volume just to hear what's going on, and that's when the game really gets you, resulting in a jump scare hitting way harder when you're leaning into the darkness or thinking you're safe, only for you to get slammed in the face whenever it happens. And that's honestly the brilliance of it within the game. The silence doesn't just set the mood, it trains you to make yourself vulnerable, but it's only one part of the crucial formula to create FNAF's amazing atmosphere. If we go back to the original FNaF, arguably one of the best games in the entire series for horror design, it was all about visuals. You never knew where the animatronics were, so any movement on the screen could make your heart jump, and the sounds just made it worse. FNaF essentially flips all of that, and now it's about listening. The visuals are still there, but they're there to support the sound, not the other way around. And honestly, FNaF 4 nails it. Every little detail in the room and hallway is designed to create a sense of nostalgia, and when the two combine, it is unfathomably creepy during your first experience. The visual design of FNAF 4 is just as important as the sound, and it's built to make you feel small, exposed, and constantly on edge. I mean, take a look. You're trapped in a bedroom that should feel safe, but darkness constantly surrounds you, and your flashlight is really the only thing that keeps the shadows at bay. And from here, the animatronics can appear from a few key areas: the bed, the closet, or down the long hallway, which there are 2 on each side, each one framed perfectly to make you tense before anything even happens. Knowing this game takes place from the mind of a child, some visual details seem a bit exaggerated, like the hallway stretching unnaturally, making everything at the end feel far closer and more threatening than it actually is. And alongside this, the bedroom itself is filled with toys, plushies, and everyday objects, creating a familiar environment that's slowly twisted just enough to feel off, almost uncanny. And honestly, for its time, the textures and lighting have a pretty good balance of realism, giving the whole space a grounded, almost believable weight, which only makes the horror hit harder. And then there are the animatronics, which are very different in comparison to anything we've seen in previous games within the series. These creatures look like warped versions of something you might have trusted as a kid, some type of mascot or plushie. They have oversized eyes, jagged teeth, stitched up bodies. They take the familiar and turn it nightmarish. Everything the animatronics have to offer are designed to make them feel real and dangerous, especially when you see them for the first time, expecting something a bit more natural like the FNAF 1 or 2 animatronics. They aren't just scary because of what they do, they're scary because of what they look like. So whenever you combine the sound and visual designs in FNAF 4, you already get an atmosphere that feels uniquely unsettling. But those 2 elements alone don't fully complete the game's formula. There's still one crucial piece missing: the factor that ties everything together and pushes the atmosphere from effective to genuinely disturbing. Throughout this video, I've mentioned a lot of small details: the darkness of the house, the sounds you hear at midnight both inside and outside the house, a bedroom filled with toys, a plushie sitting on the bed, and even a grandfather clock chiming as the night drags on. On their own, these details might seem a bit disconnected, tied only together by sound or visuals, but whenever you take them as a whole from a broader perspective, they start to resemble something much more specific: a fear filtered through the mind of a child, something previously mentioned. Childhood fears are often exaggerated, overanalyzed, and incredibly simple. I remember being scared that someone would chase me when I turned my back after taking out the trash, or stepping out of my room at night when the house was quiet and dark. Fears like that usually fade as you grow older, but for a child dealing with nightmares or trauma, especially within the context of FNAF 4's story, it's not hard to imagine believing that something really is waiting in the darkness. That's where FNAF 4's psychology comes into play. The game doesn't just scare you with monsters, it recreates the way a child interprets fear, giving you a perspective of everything that they see. Familiar spaces become threatening, ordinary sounds feel dangerous, and the imagination fills in every gap with something worse. It's unsettling in a way that feels personal, almost nostalgic, but deeply uncomfortable. It's similar to the Uncanny Valley, but FNAF 4 stands out on its own as a very specific kind of horror. So when sound design, visual design, and psychology all come together, FNAF 4 creates an atmosphere that feels carefully crafted just for this exact experience. Back in 2015, that experience felt fresh, intense, and genuinely terrifying. And while time has changed how we react to it, I'd argue that many of those scares still work, because they're rooted in something we all understand on a deeper level. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this content, consider watching my last episode where I spoke about the FNAF movie. And as always, I'm Jeeps, and I'll see you next time.